But that's going to lead us to our round 20 tipping here. Let's cap this episode off with some predictions. And this is a bit of an interesting one here. Obviously, there's a handful of games that might be able to surprise some people and could go either way. And who knows, maybe some kind of upsets in terms of tipping here. But let's start things off. It's going to be St. Kilda and Carlton. And I mean, St. Kilda, their skid it came to an end, but they played a really solid game. And Carlton, obviously not looking great after North Melbourne. I like St. Kilda in this one in Marvel. It could be a little bit closer. It could be a two, maybe three-goal game. But ultimately, I think the Saints revitalize their finals hopes in this one.
Rowan Marshall is back, and when Rowan Marshall and Patty Ryder play, the Saints usually win. I'm going to go with the Saints in here. I think Carlton is a train speeding off to an empty cliff, and unfortunately, I think they're going to take Coach
A
Teague with
little
them in
harsh.
that. Unfortunately, they are. I really wish this old grand old club was not having the issues that they have, but right now they are an out of control train headed for a very high cliff, and unfortunately, the fall may be ugly. So I am going to tip the Saints on this one.
Mm-hmm. And the next game is the biggest spread in terms of betting odds. We have the Western Bulldogs coming in at a buck 08, and the Adelaide Crows coming in at a scorching $8. Oh, so if you want to tip underdogs, this is one hell of a game to spend some money on. Although I think there might be a better option than this one. But yeah, I'm taking the doggies at Mars almost every day. I think there's a chance where, I mean, with Taylor Walker back, you never know how many points this LA team could put up. The Western Bulldogs did give up a hefty margin to a D's team that isn't known for offense. So it could actually end up coming between maybe a couple goals. I like the doggies still, but don't be too surprised if the Crows are actually able to push this team a little bit.
I'm gonna pick the doggies in this one, especially considering I think this game is with this game still being in Victoria. I have a hard time. This Crows team is just they are struggling right now. They're not playing really good footy. I think the doggies are playing really well. I'm very fascinated to see how does Josh Shackey keep his spot, and does he continue to play back now that Alex Keith will be out for several weeks. I think the doggies win. I think the doggies will play really well in this one, so I'm really excited. I'm just hoping the Crows can keep it close.
Yeah, I have a little bit of confidence that they might be able to just pull that one off. Well, honestly, maybe if I want to give you a sneak preview of my underdog tips of the round that I put out typically every Wednesday or Thursday, just depending on maybe when games are. This is going to be one of them. We have the going up to Tassie. We have the North Melbourne Roos take on the Geelong Cats, and kind of going to what I was saying about the Cats earlier in this show, how they've been winning games and they've been winning games by decent margins, but they haven't looked fantastic. And although that's hardly a knock on them, calling the team not fantastic isn't really discrediting them too much. But even how North has been playing, they have the ability to catch some teams off guard. So if you're going to bet a tip on underdog, I love this one. I'm going to go with the Cats still, but you got to keep an eye out on this game.
This is the proverbial trap game for me. This is the one where does Geelong overlook the high powered Geelong? Does Geelong overlook a progressing, improving North Melbourne team? Do they walk in with everybody saying, "Hey, you're going to win this game. You should really win this game"? It, does it bounce back? Does it really hit them in the face in this one? I think the Cats should win this one, but keep an eye out. North Melbourne has just been so pesky. This is an older Geelong team. You never know how it's going to go. They're still without Jeremy Cameron. I think Gary Rowan is back. So I think it should be a Cats win, but North Melbourne's so pesky. I'm going to want to keep an eye on this one.
Mm-hmm. And we definitely one of the more interesting games of the round. And I mean, this is a must watch game right here. The next one is going to be the Gold Coast Suns and a venue to be determined somewhere in Victoria, taking on the Melbourne Demons. And this is one where, depending, we've seen a bit of a surprise Suns team recently, so I really think that they could push this Demons team maybe to the limits, almost what North Melbourne could do to the Geelong Cats. Ultimately, I am going to roll with Melbourne, but it's going to be a close affair.
It's the same basically. You can retrack and rewind what I just said when it comes to North Melbourne v
Yep.
Geelong. This is a potential trap game. Gold Coast is playing better. The D's potentially could be on the road. They have not completely rolled out Metricon Stadium potentially, but it's all the traveling between Queensland and Victoria and cases and everything like that. So there's still a ton up in the air. The D's should win this one, but the Suns are just going. I think they are going to give some headaches to this D's team, but I think D's win it. But this could potentially be very, very close.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, I'm excited about those two games. One that I might be a little bit less excited about, but nonetheless interested, of course, is the Collingwood Magpies and the West Coast Eagles. And going off of recent form in the last couple rounds, you got to pick the Eagles in this one. Although it does depend on what Eagles team you get. If you get the one we've seen recently, they should be able to win this game handily. If you get one of the ones where it's like the one that showed up against Sydney or North Melbourne, maybe a Josh Kennedy list team, you're going to have some issues. I will tip the Eagles in this one though.
I'm gonna tip the Eagle. I'm gonna tip the Eagles in this one, but this is the game that always seems to get me. West Coast on the road at the G
Right?
against a potential team that can give them headaches. Grundy and Nick Natanui is always an incredible rock battle. I always look forward to when these two face each other. These two bulls of the ruck ring are absolutely outstanding to watch. This will be what midfield benefits from the winning of the ruck battles. If Nick Nat starts to get up on Grundy because of his size and athleticism, I think the West Coast Eagles should win this one. But man, this is 3 games in a row where I'm sitting here going, man, this is ripe for an upset.
Mm-hmm. And one where it might be ripe for an upset as well, depending on what kind of Dons team we get. If they can go out there to the Gabba and maybe punch the Swans in the mouth from the start and hold on after said punching of the mouth, yeah, they could take this game. But given, I mean, the returning players, as you mentioned, for Sydney, and how well they've been looking, I mean, between Isaac Haney, between Tom Papley, between Buddy Franklin, and the hosts of other guys that have been producing a great volume. This should be a game where Sydney solidifies their spot in the finals and keeps that hope alive for a top four spot. And Essendon might be hoping on some losses this round to keep them in the hunt.
This one's going to be a fun one because this is a rematch of round 4 where Sydney only won by 3. This is a really keep your eye out one for it. But here's a couple of caveats. Buddy was not playing at the time,
Mm-hmm.
so Buddy was not there. So this is going to be a little bit different. There've been a few lineup changes. I think I've said it before earlier in the episode. It is never easy to beat a team a second time. I'm going to tip Sydney, but Essendon, just there's something about them this season. I just don't want to give up on them. I think they are going to give Sydney headaches because of some of the height and athleticism that they have on this team. I don't think with Jones being out, I think that kind of uncomplicates Sydney's issues in the back line, but we'll definitely have to see how does Mills and Cunningham come back? Are they full strength? Are they full fitness because of the fact that they've had to isolate? Yes, they've been given treadmills and they've been given running, but they've had to do it in their own hotel room. So we'll have to see how is their fitness? How does Mills and Cunningham, if they do come back in straight away, how do they assimilate back into the team? And will we see any fatigue issues with these two players if they do come back?
Mm-hmm. Obviously, something to keep an eye out for. Great point there. We'll see how it affects them. And then up in Tasmania, we got the Hawthorn Hawks and the Brisbane Lions. And I mean, this is another game. I'm just going to say again, another game where Hawthorn might play the Brisbane Lions competitively. I do ultimately like the Lions, and for the Hawks, this is another game where they get really. There's potential where North Melbourne's able to jump the Hawks in this one, and the Hawks might be the bottom team at the end of the round. It could be close. Probably won't happen, but there's a decent chance.
Trap game number 4. Because again, a lower base team that's playing okay footy against an upper team that I think a lot of people are going to sit there, pat them on the back, and go, "Well, you should win this round. Shouldn't be much of a problem." And these are the games that usually bite you. It is at University of Tasmania Stadium, which the Hawks play really, really well.
Mhm.
But I'm not liking the vibe on this club right now, especially since the whole Clarkson Mitchell transition, whatever it's supposed to be. I'm still kind of confused on that myself. I'm going to tip the Lions on this one, but this is another one I will be keeping my eye on because the potential for an upset is ripe on this one.
And then the next game also has a little bit of potential. I mean, the last two games have potential for upsets here. This whole round has potential for upsets. There's no lock game, so this is. I mean, I don't really bet on most sports, and I can't, would never be able to bring myself to bet on the AFL. Just almost guaranteed to lose money. At best, you might wash. But we got the GWS Giants taking on Port Adelaide in a pretty big matchup for either team. Port Adelaide, with the chance that they lose this one, they might lose out of the top four. The Giants need to win this one, likely if they want to stay in the top eight, or they have a bunch of other teams lose. But honestly, the Giants are going to fall out of the top eight if they lose this game. Actually, because if you take a look, Fremantle and Richmond, what more than likely one of those teams is going to win that game. Obviously, got thrown the potential for a draw, but more than likely, GWS loses, they drop out. So this is a big one for them. They are going to be, I guess, the home team right now. It's still in a to be confirmed venue in Victoria. So obviously things are going to change the closer we get to the game, but ultimately, I'll take Port Adelaide in this one, but returning Toby Green could really spark this Giants team, and maybe they get their rear ends on check and they kind of feel the heat from the hot seat and maybe get onto a pace to sprint to these finals in the last four games.
I agree with you. The return of Toby Green, but it's kind of like what I said with Mills and Cunningham. What Toby Green are you getting? Are you
Mm-hmm.
getting a Toby Green that's underdone a little bit? We'll have to see. But the thing I look at it is, I agree with you. I'm going to go with Port because Port is getting healthy. Rosie's back. Butters is back. Dersma's back. And it sounds like there's a possibility Fantasia could be back
Ooh.
quite soon. And Robbie Gray is probably due here about a round before the finals. Port Adelaide's getting their young stars and their skill back. I think that is going to get them over the line in this one. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to tip Port, but this for me is game of the round. If GWS plays the game that they can, this is going to be an almighty cracking game of footy. I cannot wait to watch this game this weekend.
And then the last game of the round, we can head on over to Optus. Possible location for the grand final this year. And it's certainly going to be a super interesting matchup in terms of finals implications for the Fremantle Dockers and the Richmond Tigers. And even with the injuries, I mean, obviously, either side has taken a handful of injuries that have been just kind of devastating to either team. But I'm going to take the underdog in the Fremantle Dockers in this one. I think they might be able to pull it together enough, and a little bit of that Optus magic might lead them to win in a potential spot in the top eight at the end of the round.
Now, I'm gonna go with Richmond in this one, and there's two massive reasons why. And unfortunately, I did discuss them during no Nat Fife,
Mm-hmm.
season done with a shoulder injury, and no Michael Walters.
Mm-hmm.
Two of your best players on the Frio Dockers that were healthy, both out for this game. Yes, Richmond doesn't have Dusty. Yes, Richmond is very, very injured in the back, but they've been picking some youngsters and have been playing better footy. I think that the voodoo of Optus Stadium is not as strong this round because you're playing a Frio team that is injured.
Mm-hmm.
They're still fighting injuries. And if Darcy is not fully healthy, I think Nankervis has a big game in this one. I think Richmond just has a little too much. I'm sorry, Knockers fans who know me very well. I really want to tip them, but losing Fife and Walters
Hey,
in
I
that
got
game
you guys
against
though.
Sydney,
I got you
I
guys.
think I think I think might be a death blow,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, to Frio's final chances because I think those two losses are absolutely gigantic.
obviously know Nat 5 is going to play a huge role, but it might not be as big of a loss as some people might think, at least when it comes to the scoreboard, because Nat 5, I mean, at best, has been fairly iffy this year when it comes to goal kicking in accuracy. So, goal wise, he might not hurt this team too much. But obviously, there is going to be a hole that's going to be hard to fill. It's always hard to fill a role like of a player like Nat 5, though. So that's always fair to say.